So that's super helpful. So that's your morning, and that's the community outreach coordinator. What's the day look like for a crisis responder? Because the jobs are different. They merge and they cross paths, as you mentioned, but morning starts. What's the day look like for a crisis responder?
Yeah, through the rest of the day, we are either responding to calls for service that look appropriate for a crisis responder. That could be checking the welfare on somebody. It could be something that comes in as a disorderly conduct crime, and either we have an idea who the person is, or patrol gets there and say it's this person and they're having a mental health crisis, not intending to commit a criminal act. There could be a trespass that occurs. And so we're all watching for those calls for service. And also our crisis responders are proactively going out and checking up on people that, like I mentioned before, they do short-term intense case management. So short-term is the shortest term possible, that they will get a hold of somebody, try to triage with them what it is they need to be successful, and finding the right avenue to drop them off with that will make them successful. Mm-hmm. We're kind of like an airport, if you will. Mm-hmm. So an airport, nobody's destination is really the airport. We go to the airport to get to our destination and then go from there. Mm-hmm. So we are just but an airport terminal. You're here for a short time to wait until your flight gets to where you need to go. So that's what that looks like during our day. I will go either with our crisis responders because it's something where there is a safety issue that needs to be mitigated, which brings me in the enforcement prong, or they need my authority to exercise maybe an involuntary action with somebody. Then the rest of their days are spent writing reports of what their interactions were, just like in police work.
So their job's a lot like police officers in that they are on the police radio. They're in plain clothes with credentials, but our model, because there's a lot of different models, mm-hmm. Our folks are in plain clothes so that they're the most approachable possible to the population they serve. They're driving a car that is marked with very minimal police markings, but it's very obvious that it's a behavioral health unit. They are using our computer-aided dispatch programs. They are monitoring the call board. They are self-dispatching and dispatched by dispatch. So it's a lot like a patrol officer,
right?
In that and again, there's other models across the country, but our model is they are very proactive. They wear boots. They are out on the street every day, handling calls, proactively contacting people, so that if I talk to Bob this morning, there's a chance that this intervention with Bob, who had a hard day yesterday, and I was able to find him in an alley this morning, if I can get my hands on him this morning and help him, I may avoid police calls for service later in the day, right? So mm-hmm. My early intervention with Bob, it could reduce calls for service down the road and help him get the need met before he even knows he has it.
Right. You mentioned the different models that are out there for crisis responders. I like our model, which has been intentional because it leads to more agility for the crisis responder and the patrol officer. Another model is the crisis responder riding in the police car with the cop mm-hmm. to all the calls that they go to. And that works great, especially if you got to travel long distances. Mm-hmm. A part that I don't like about that is that one or the other ends up being tied up on one or the other's type of call. Mm-hmm. So the cop goes to a
2 hours processing a DUI.
Yeah, right. There you go. Yeah. You pick up a drunk driver
yeah.
and you have a crisis responder with you
yeah.
who could be going to crisis responder
yeah.
cars.
Yeah.
And vice versa, you have a cop tied up because their crisis responder calls, they take time. Like I mentioned, the one that I detailed where I have afforded the time. They could be with somebody for hours trying to get them to the appointment that they need. Or one of our crisis responders was on a phone call for 5 hours mm-hmm. trying to navigate Social Security for somebody. Mm-hmm. Now, I imagine my administration would not be happy if one of their cops was tied up for 5 hours because the crisis responder was on a phone call or tied up with a client for that long.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense for us. There is a concern of safety aspects as well. Obviously, there should be. Our crisis responders are unarmed civilians. We are intentional about their branding and their look. They have soft clothes just like anybody else would out there on the street, so that way they don't look like the police official. Oftentimes when you have the crisis responder located directly with the police officer, most of the models I've seen is they're wearing almost everything the same as the police officer, but the gun belt.
Yeah.
And I'm just not so sure that a person in crisis who looks at a person wearing all dark clothes with patches on their sides and a ballistic vest, if they're going to like look and see if they have a gun or not to determine if they are the crisis responder or the cop, when they just showed up in a cop car.
Yeah, right.
And so we are intentional about not creating that barrier. But with that, we also have to be concerned about safety, that my crisis responders have to keep in mind and triage safety aspects. And that's where I come in. If there's any component that there could be a safety aspect, cop has to be there leading the charge on that until risk can be mitigated. So that's why I like our model better. It works for us. Maybe it's just because we're a medium-sized city and it works well, but it's one that I advocate for.
So I guess I'll end with this. Just my 2 cents on what I think makes our program successful is that we have first responders in our crisis responders are true first responders who wear boots and work in the trenches, as opposed to models where you're waiting for the individuals who need service to come to you, or you forcing people to make appointments and come to buildings and do things that is contrary to their daily life. We meet people where they are on the street. And I use the boots as it's sort of a metaphor. On day one, when we first brought the contractors on, who are some of the same individuals, they showed up in, shoes, lady shoes. They happen to be ladies. And they're in my office, they're in the captain's office, and I'm giving them their briefing. And I said, y'all are going to need boots. And, they're like, oh, well, we'll see. And some of them had done crisis response work before, but I just knew from what I knew about responding to calls in our town and what we envisioned for this model, boots was, again, I'll say it's a little bit of a metaphor, but they were also literally going to need boots because some places are gross. And so at the end of day one, our team comes in and they said about these boots. And they spent the morning the next day going to a police supplier and getting some boots. And so I use that as a metaphor to say our program works because we have true first responders in the trenches, meeting people where they are, solving problems before they happen. Your, I guess, final thoughts on why our program works and where you think it's going.
I think I've discussed just about all the reasons why it works. The agility and the ability to have time and direction and latitude to get things done. We are collectively problem solvers, and that's what we approach every day is problem solving. The plan for the future is one to grow a little bit more and add another cop to the mix, because I can only be there so much, and I have supervisory duties that come up as well. But what I see is the next level would be to have another police officer attached to the unit that can help divide and conquer things that I can't make it to. Just continuing doing what we're doing, but at a greater scale.
Awesome. Well, we gave this presentation in a community forum once at a city council meeting. I thought it was a great success. It really painted a picture of success through lessons learned over a 10-year process, as both of us have evolved through different positions of patrol officer, corporal, detective, patrol supervisors, commanders and sergeants, and just we've served at every level along the way. Mm-hmm. And our department, with the support of the chief, who's the behavioral health unit was his brainchild, has really tackled this problem proactively. And the result is we've created a service for the community based on their demand. We're serving the individuals in need and in crisis better with the model. And I think we're meeting the needs of the community better than we ever have. And I think, without patting ourselves on the back too much, our collective success is an example that other agencies, other communities could follow.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that, I'm MCNEW, and this is Duty, Grit, and Grinds. Thanks for watching.